But for all leaders, I think we really have to get to that point where it can't be black and white all the time. We're in a people business. 85% of our budget, 85% of our budget goes towards people. And so we need to know our people.
The low pay grade in education for educators is because most of them are women. And in a society in general, uh, because of the men being a provider ideology, right? A women contributing to the household income is still not the driving force.
You have a salary schedule, good or bad, right or wrong. There's a general salary schedule. You'll get credit for years of experience and some of those kind of things. You might have a master's, or you might have some other things, but the basic salary schedule is applied to anybody that walks through the door. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female or what the color of your skin is. It's going to be applied the same. Now,
is there any mandate or any particular exercise that teachers do all the time which you think waste their time, and you want to erase that, or you want to deprecate it?
We chase things that we don't need to chase. I know across this country right now, there's going to be cell phone mandates that you have to take cell phones away from kids. And I know not everybody agrees with me. I think that's chasing our tail.
So, hello, my fellow educators and school leaders. I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder at Tomo Club. And on our Tomo Club podcast series, today we have Superintendent Greg Wyman from JO Comms Unified School District. And today we are going to talk about how we are missing on something when we undervalue teachers. It's a very interesting topic right around the cusp when most of the school districts are back to school or about to be back to schools. And it's going to be another year of a lot of hustle, a lot of grind, and a lot of conversation around teachers burnout, teachers retention, teachers attrition. How do you get educators aligned for so many upcoming programs that schools are planning on, among a million other things? So I think this is the most opportune time to talk about teachers, and I'm so happy to welcome you, Greg, on our podcast.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it. It should be a good topic.
Absolutely. So, Greg, before we get into the topic, I would love if you can give us a snapshot of your entire journey in education till now.
Sure. This is going into my 40th year. I will be retiring at the end, so 40 years is long enough. I was a teacher in a high school. I'm here in Arizona, and I was a teacher for high school for 7 years. Then I moved into administration as a kind of a teacher on assignment for several years. Then I went down and was a principal at a small school on the border, for a K-12 school on the border, about 120 kids. The high school I'd been at was at 3,000 kids, so you can see the difference there.
Yeah.
After a couple of years, I went up to the northeast part of the state and started out as a high school principal for 1 year, and then I became a superintendent. I was there for 6 years in the northeastern part of the state at Snowflake Unified School District. Then I came down to the valley, the Phoenix Valley, and I was a superintendent at Apache Junction, which was a slightly larger district, about 6,000 kids. Went over and was assistant superintendent at Tempe Union, which was a high school district only, about 10, 12,000 kids. Then I went back to the superintendency and was back up in rural at about an hour northeast of Phoenix in a town called Payson. I was there for 6 years as superintendent. I've now been down in JO Comms, which is right on the eastern edge of the greater Phoenix Valley. And I've been here, this is my 7th year. So kind of moved around, seen both rural and suburban more than urban. And I've enjoyed the 40 years tremendously. It's a wonderful profession to be part of.
No, I absolutely adore that. And I read your post that this is going to be your last year of before retirement.
Yep.
So yeah, this is going to be a exciting year, hopefully.
Yep.
And I'm thank you for your service, first of all. So I always ask this question: what got you into education in the first place?
It's actually pretty simple. I was lucky. I've lived in a lot of places throughout my life, from South America to Canada and points in between. I was in a mining family. But what I always found is no matter where I was at, I always was around fantastic teachers. And I always had really, really good teachers. I was in small communities and they made a connection to me. And so I think when I decided what I wanted to do, I wanted to have that same connection, that ability to make a positive difference in the life of a child. And I don't think it was much more than that. I felt like at the high school level in particular where I taught, high school's a tough time for a lot of kids. And if I could go in and help those kids manage that time, go through some of the things they go through and help them out, that would be worthwhile. I was a teacher and a coach. And I just found that as I moved up in administration, the reality is all that happened is my classroom just got a little bit bigger. And in this case, when you get to the superintendency, you tend to have parents in that classroom and community members in that classroom, legislators in that classroom. But the idea is still the same: is how do we help people manage day-to-day life and just get through, and how can we provide service? I'm a strong proponent of relationships and building strong, positive relationships. That's always been the case as a teacher, and it's just transcended into leadership. And that's really what I want to do more than anything else, is ultimately just end up helping people.
Now, I'm glad to know that your initial motivation is still intact, and I think it has just continued to grow over the years, because otherwise I've met a lot of people who work in education, and the reason that they joined is not the reason they're still continuing, or they
Yes.
did not enjoy the same passion because of multiple reasons. They could not do what they want to do, or they want to be close to the students but not anymore, they're away from for them. So yeah, I'm so glad that you could have that analogy of um, working with teachers, working with administrators as a new classroom for yourself, which is a very unique take than I have seen before. But in terms of Arizona, it has continued to have teacher shortage as a continuous problem, like in terms of the surveys, in terms of data, which is always out. And when you talk to a teacher, it's not always about the pay, but it's all about multiple things that the reason that they are, dropping out. So, what do you think are the reasons that so many teachers are driving out of this profession?
Well, I don't think, as a general rule, that they're valued high enough in this country. As we've said, it's 40 years, and so if you don't value people for 40 years, or don't value a profession for 40 years, talk about all the problems associated with the profession. Look to go ahead and advocate for supposed school choice, and then it becomes an attack on, most recently, though, the whole woke culture and whether you're indoctrinating or not. I think for any of us, it's about a sense of purpose and a sense of what we're doing is worthwhile. And if you hear that consistently year over year over year, you have to start asking yourself, what am I doing? And why am I still in this profession? When you compound that with a lack of, in many cases, respect, a lack of understanding of the job, to be totally honest. If I had a nickel for everybody who thought they could teach, I'd be a rich man. But the reality, when you actually get in the classroom, is radically different. And so when you have that, and then you're not getting the pay, and although everybody likes to think that teachers only work 9 months a year, I'd challenge you with two things. Number one, do the math on the salary, and the difference of 3 months doesn't really change that salary that much. But the amount of time and effort you put in to go ahead and make a difference for kids, regardless of what level you're at, you're participating as a coach, you're being a sponsor of a club, you're staying after school. It's a lot more involved and complex. And if you were valued within that setting, then you probably could stay. But when you aren't perceived to be valued, and whether it's business or legislative, political, whatever it is, at some point in time, I think it wears on people. We can talk about concerns about leadership and all those things, but I don't think there's any one factor. I think it's all of those factors combined. You start to ask yourself, why am I doing this? If you're trying to raise a family and then you go into the private sector and you make 2, 3, 4 times what you're making in the public sector, you say, is it really worth it? And I can't tell you how many good teachers, not because they didn't want to teach, but it became financial. But I think it's a combination of all those things. It's much easier to step away if you don't feel valued than it is to stay around.
No, I agree with you. And yeah, it's a sorry state in that regard. And but walk me through one of the hardest conversations that you might had with an educator about being undervalued or burnt out. So, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I think throughout my career, I don't know that there's one. I think the piece that we always forget, when I say we, I mean collectively everybody, is you
Yeah.
don't know what everybody else is going through. And so trying to sit down and really understand what that person's going through. There have been times that based on getting to know a particular teacher and what they're going through, that my advice to them would be to step away. That based on everything in their life and what their goals are or what their family situation is, if there's a family member fighting an illness or something like that, that it's really that time that they need to step away and do something different or change their working conditions because there's too much on their plate. And I think that's the piece that for me is what I've tried to really make sure I set up in organizations is a relational capacity so we can sit down and have that honest conversation about you as an individual, what you're trying to do, what your skill sets are, and whether this is the best place for you at this moment in time, or quite frankly, as a career. I've sat down with some either new teachers, either young teachers or people coming back on a second career, and had a conversation that says this is really, although I understand you may think you have the desire based on what I'm seeing, it's really not transcending into the skill set that the kids need. Because at the end of the day, it's about the kids. So I think you just have that conversation about who you are as an individual and what's important. But for all leaders, I think we really have to get to that point where it can't be black and white all the time. We're in a people business. 85% of our budget, 85% of our budget goes towards people. And so we need to know our people. We need to know what's going on and help them out. And in some cases, you can give them solutions to the problems that keep them in because they really don't understand the bigger picture. I have a different view as a superintendent. In other cases, it may be time to counsel that there's something better, even if it's momentarily, that they can always come back to. And I think that's what I've learned. I don't know if there's one single incident, but I think it's more of a case of just working with people over time that's what I work for.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Those are tough conversations for sure. One hypothesis that I have that I want to reconfirm from you is the low pay grade in education for educators is because most of them are women. And in a society in general, uh, because of the men being a provider ideology, right? A woman contributing to the household income is still not the driving force. So, because of that kind of nature, we could see that there are much more women as an educator than men. So, either way, or it can be the way around because it's not paying enough. Hence, men are not attracted towards teaching. So, there can be two different perspectives of the same situation. What is your take on that? And sorry, and the third take that I have before I end, the third take is because it's a political situation where people are going to decide, they are getting not enough incentive to drive the pay grade of the educators, and hence it's not going up. What's your take on that?
I mean, I think historically, when you look at this country, a lot of what you said is accurate. When we take a look at going back to the early days and who taught and woman dominated, whether it's the nursing field or teaching field, is still there. I do think that there's some subtle changes. I think some of the issues that we're having are as opportunity has grown for females is that they may look at other opportunities that they may have not looked at in yesteryear. And so they look to make that change. And they're not necessarily just going to be satisfied with one or two fields. They're expecting and wanting and deserving of access to all areas. I think when you place some of the political conversations that are taking place in our country right now, there's probably a degree of truth to what's taking place. What I can say, because of the system that's set up, ironically, when it comes to gender equity relative to pay, we're probably closer in public education than most any other field.
Interesting.
So if you're a teacher, you have a salary schedule, good or bad, right or wrong. There's a general salary schedule. you'll get credit for years of experience and some of those kind of things. You might have a master's, or you might have some other things, but the basic salary schedule is applied to anybody that walks through the door. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female or what the color of your skin is. It's going to be applied the same. Now, the inequities occur between rich and poor districts, not between the process that's available within education, but much more between those that have and those that do not have. And so when you get into rural schools and there's not as much, you might see the cost down. If you're into a state that, like Arizona, that tends to be funded somewhere in the low or the high 40s, low 50 type thing, it's going to be different than if you're in Massachusetts or New Jersey or Minnesota that pays at a different rate. And so I think that changes, but that's really about wealth, income, and your desire, or as a state, in terms of how you're going to treat something as simple as what's your tax rate. In a more conservative state like Arizona is, I know there's been any number of times where I've gone to refinance a house, and people are, when I tell them what I pay, they're saying, well, I don't mean monthly, I mean annually. And I tell you, that's what I do pay in taxes. You're kidding me. And so you make those decisions as a state, as a community, and you decide for or against. So I think you get an inequality more from wealth in terms of the district or the community than you do the profession. I think from the profession standpoint, gender equity for pay is fairly close. I know there's still, and superintendents, males are a little bit higher, but not disproportionately to like it is in other professions. And so I do think it's something that has to be worked on. I think it's getting better. But we'll have to see, because as we go through some of the political dynamics that are taking place right now, there could be a step backwards. No different than there's probably, the whole cycle of whether a small portion of our society has a lot of money or we have the collective good has been an ongoing cycle in this country. You can go back to the robber barons or the Gilded Age, and it's the same concept and it's the same fight. And so we may be taking a step back, but we'll circle back around and we'll do a better job. I think what we do now compared to what we used to do 50 years ago is radically different. And I think that's a positive, but we are going through a cycle right now, which seems to be focused on the few getting the most and the majority not getting as much.
No, I love all those points, and I agree. There is no pay grade difference between educators of whatever gender they may be, or whatever area they or race they might be. But one thing I definitely want to like talk a lot about is there's no variable component. There is no performance based pay in education, in a way, right? If you're doing a good job, of course, there is an hierarchy of growth. Of course, from educators, you can become administrators, and from there, you can enter into districts, and hence one day superintendent. And this has been a story which I absolutely love, that none of the superintendents I've met was directly appointed. They all went through the grind from educator to the. So there is a ladder, or in a way to climb in your career as an educator. But in terms of incentive to perform, there is no variable component. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you have to look at what are the measures you're using to measure people. And I think the reason why we have that problem is we're talking about human beings. We're talking about kids that come to the table. To use an analogy, we're starting a 100-meter race. Some kids get a 10-yard start, some kids start on the starting line, and some kids start 10 yards behind. So how are we going to measure what success really is? We're infatuated with test scores in this country. Do test scores really indicate success? What's the success of a child? How many children have not been the most successful students, but when they grow up and they get to the area that they find that they have a passion for, they're extremely successful. So we're trying to judge based on this market model that says we're going to say you're good or you're bad based on a singular number on a singular day about a singular test. And so that becomes very hard that's going to be the case. Well, if that's the case, I'm probably going to look at, we've seen this with teachers, I'm probably going to look at, I would rather place myself in a high wealth income school district
Yeah.
where I have, because we know that income is the barrier or the gatekeeper to initial success, not long-term success, but at least initial success on a test while you're in K-12. And so I'll go ahead and spend my time there versus somewhere else. So if we want to use a one idea or one moment in time to judge success, then I think it's a faulty success meter. Now I don't have an answer to say what would be the performance pay piece that you should get, but I just want to say that unlike the private sector, where if I speed up the conveyor belt, I get a different product coming out. How much more? It's a different measuring take than when you're dealing with individual human beings, and these kids come with whatever they come with, good or bad, and you're trying to work through that. And so if you get a kid who's had a very tough home life and they just make a little bit of growth on the academic side, but make a bunch of growth on the personal or the social emotional side, so how do you quantify that? And so
Yeah.
is that counts? But in our society right now, we don't quantify that stuff. As a matter of fact, if you get into some of those arenas, it's considered woke versus, but
Yeah.
that's what's good for the kid.
Mm.
And a test score in and of itself isn't enough. If test scores were the end all be all, then everybody that was successful in this country would have been a valedictorian.
Yeah.
But they're not valedictorians. We're all had good or bad experiences, and we made our way through for lots of reasons besides a test score. But we're infatuated and have been for the last 50 years with test scores, and test scores aren't the measure of the success of a teacher, nor the measure of the success of a student. And I think that's the problem is we keep coming back to this artificial measure and it doesn't work. And so people say, the heck with it, we're not going to do that. We get beat up for that by not having the measure. But let's have a real conversation about those kind of things. And it's hard because you don't have the data to support. How do you get the support on a growth of a kid that's got confidence that never had the confidence before
Yeah.
because of the environment in the classroom? And so that's where it gets a little bit dicey. And if you just put it on test scores, I don't think you get a true indication of what's taking place.
No, that was incredible because understanding the root cause of a problem is more important. So if I am talking about variable pay grade for teachers depending on performance, the question is what is performance? And if it is standardized test, then is it actually a reflection? So I absolutely love that we need to go deeper, understanding the root cause of a problem, than looking for a surface level solution. So, but
Well, and I would say this too, because when we come to the school choice movement,
yes, I was
which
about
what
to
my
add to that.
Substack
Yeah.
what my Substack article was about is, yeah, so we have this concern about teachers and how they're doing in public education and whether the school or the teacher or the principal or whoever's got the test score they need and the letter grade that we want to get and all that kind of stuff. Yet we over here, we're saying anybody can teach.
Hmm.
We're going to have a homeschool situation or a charter school situation or a private school situation where you don't need certification, where you don't need all these things. And we're not going to test you to see, and we're not going to hold you accountable based on the same things that we're holding public school teachers, what I call traditional K-12 public school teachers. And I think that becomes a real interesting dynamic is why is it a problem over here, but it's not a problem over on the other side? If
Hmm.
we're going to be all in this thing together, then let's treat all of ourselves equally, and then we can have a different conversation. But we only seem to have a one-sided conversation about what supposedly is or isn't happening in comparison to what may be happening over in the school choice arena. And that concerns me. We have in this state what's called micro schools. I'm sure they're going around the country where I just go ahead and if I get 15 kids at $7,000, I make $105,000 and I just educate them in my living room.
Yeah.
On what skill set? And so what is it we're doing? So we devalue the whole profession. And then we try to go ahead and use something like test scores to then turn around and grade a system that we've devalued. It's kind of a screwed up mess right now.
No, I agree. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. So when me and my wife were planning to have a baby, now we have a 1.5-year-old baby. So we used to discuss this at length that should there be a parenting qualification, right? That are we qualified enough to actually grow a baby and give him or her the right set of values, right set of resources, and now if you look at, then I used to always argue that at least there is a structure of schooling, there is a structure of like a village taking care of a baby, so it's not only on us. But
Right.
if I am taking the responsibility of teaching as well, I am taking a lot more onus on the baby's life than anybody. And there is no shared, or there is no contribution of anyone else than in the early foundation, at least. So it is very concerning in that way, that because I read these kind of promotion emails and content all the time, that open your micro school, make $100,000 a year, and they try to make it very simplified for you, and uh, and then it becomes always a moral compass, that will they be putting me through a test whether I can open a micro school in my living room, and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's because that exactly was my next question to you, was about the purpose of public school system, because there is a decline in enrollments, and where are these kids going to? They are going to um, micro schools, charter schools. Charter school is still fine because there is a structure, there is a I would say accountability factor, but at home
Well, but
school,
I would say yes, no, on a couple things. So
yeah.
so I think the fundamental difference in this country over time has been the notion of the common good versus the privileged few. So when our country first started, we did not have the notion of public education. If you were wealthy enough, there was elite schools that you could send your kids to. With Horace Mann in the 1830s, we came to this notion of the common good, that we would give every child an opportunity in the system. And so I think that's the nexus of what we have right now with the school choice. So we're moving away from that and going back to this idea of elitism, and those that can get more than those that can't, or those that have get more than those that don't have. And I think that's a danger when we look at our country. Our country was founded on giving every kid an opportunity, irrespective. And so when we start to look at what's happening with the other choices, I think there's some fundamental issues. And if everybody was being treated the same, but I think fundamentally what you have, even in the charter school movement, and I know it varies from state to state, and I can only speak to Arizona, but in the charter school movement or the private school movement, is that all of a sudden it's about profit making.
Hmm.
Because what happens when you go into, whether it's a homeschool or a charter school, not so much charter but private, but private schools don't have to accept special needs kids.
Yeah, they don't.
So who's expected to pick up that cost?
Yeah.
The public schools are. Right now, there's a paper I just read in the last 2 weeks, and this is not the first time this has come up. It was stated that public schools have a monopoly on transportation on yellow buses. No, we don't. We just choose to transport kids. Privates and charters can transport kids if they so choose, but that costs money. And so if I'm going to go against the profit margin, I might choose not to do it. The suggestion of this report was, since we have extra space in our buses, we should transport these kids. Why should public schools transport these kids? That's your responsibility. Facilities. Oh, you have extra space. Why is the numbers going down? The number one reason is because declining birth rate. It doesn't have anything to do. So when we sit and take a look in America with the declining birth rate, I can speak to Arizona more than others. But what people don't understand is that declining birth rate is going into traditional publics, to charter schools, to private schools. Look around this country and see how many private schools have had to close their doors because of declining enrollment. It's a function of less kids. And so right out of the gate, there's an assumption that they're leaving the public system for these other choices. The range and percentage of kids that leave the system depends on where you're at, but it still only runs in the 10 to 20%. That's what it's been for the longest time. And so when you sit and have that conversations, in some places it's more profound, like in Arizona. In this district, we only capture 30% of our kids. We lose 70% of our kids on choice issues. And so when you sit and take a look at what's going on across the country, the first thing we have to understand is the decline in birth rate is affecting across the board. So we can't say that K-12 isn't doing a good job because everybody's going to charter or private or homeschool, when in fact those same schools are losing kids at the same proportional rate as the traditional publics are. And so there's again, back to your a little bit deeper to the root cause of what's taking place. And that root cause is much, much greater than people realize when it comes to birth rate. When it comes to some of those other factors, I would just ask people in any state to take a look and see who the majority of private schools or charter schools are taking care of. They're not taking care of rural kids because they're not going to place a school in a rural school because they can't make a profit off it. They're not placing them in poor sections. There's an occasional one here or there, and they'll tell a story about how wonderful they did. But the mass majority of those kids are wealth-based. So when we talk about kids leaving the system, let's slow that down a little bit and say, no, kids are leaving the system in pocketed areas that has more to do with wealth and socioeconomics than it has to do with the system itself. And if you're in rural parts of this country, you're definitely not losing kids because nobody's putting extra schools out there because they can't generate the numbers that they need to make the profit that they want to make. And I think that's a real nuance that people don't understand. And it's easy to say the traditionals aren't making it, but that's not true. It's really a decline that's occurred over time based on birth rate as the primary indicator more than anything else.
No, I agree with you. I have heard those. I have actually know firsthand that charter schools or other schools, they do ask for your previous year report cards and your attendance data, because if you are chronically absent, they would tend to not take you because you would end up messing up their scores, which would mess up their funding from the state because charter schools have these 3-year or 5-year renewal cycles. So they are much more stringent in making sure that their numbers don't get any kind of deviation. But also, if I look from a government point of view, where they have to spend anything from $10,000 to $25,000 in a public school system per student, they are happy paying $4,000 or $5,000 to parents, or $10 or $7,000, $8,000 to charter schools. It just becomes cost effective for the state in general, right? So don't you think that it's not only at the issue at please guide me through what exactly do you think is the answer to this?
No, I was going to say, is it really cost effective? Because we're sitting here having conversations and I'll use Arizona. We have a report that comes out every year, has been coming out since 2000, that uses national statistics. So we're compared against the country. There's 6 areas: administration, classroom, support services, transportation, facilities. It's those 6 areas. Nationally, the average amount on administration, when I say administration, I'm talking about superintendents, assistant supes, principals, but I'm also talking about administrative assistants. I'm talking about benefits. I'm talking about HR. And so it's the whole thing. Is nationally, it's about 10.5%, has been consistently over the last 20, 25 years. Arizona sits right around 10.5%. There may be a year a little bit lower, a little bit lower. Okay. The charter schools in Arizona, on average, their administrative tests or their administrative costs are 22%. They're double what a public school is. So we'll get bashed as administrators and not doing our jobs and all this other stuff, but nobody's paying attention because there's not, in the case of the state of Arizona, because they draw kids from all over, you don't see it on your tax bill every year. And so oh, by the way, the report that tells you what we spend on administration, they don't do one for private schools and they don't do one for charter schools. Now, there's a report in Arizona that you can find the charter school piece. I can give you right off the top of my head 4 charter owners that made not a million, millions. Okay, I'll give you an example. I know of an individual that since 2016, as an owner of a charter school in Arizona, made $23 million. The average superintendent certificate based on AASA's survey of last year, only a little short of 2,100 superintendents answered it, so it could be a little skewed, is $158,000. That means if I'm an average superintendent in this country, I need to work 150 years to make $23 million. So where is the other piece to this conversation is about how do we spend taxpayers' money and who's doing a good job of spending taxpayer money? And if they're supposedly getting less, which they're not, but if supposedly they're getting less, if I'm spending double what a traditional public school is on administration, why is that okay? If I'm not providing transportation, why is that okay? If I don't have extracurricular activities, why is that okay? Because what we do in this country is have a holistic model for all kids. And that's why we do comprehensive models across the country in traditional public education that says, we'll provide you sports, we'll provide you fine arts, we'll provide you accelerated, we'll provide you remedial, we'll provide you a special ed, we'll feed you, we'll bus you. So if I carve out parts of those pieces of the puzzle, yeah, I can do it for less. But where's that money really going? And are they really benefiting? Oh, that's right. I'm doing it supposedly for less, but go back and check and see in this country how many private schools, as soon as you got vouchers, raised the cost of the private school.
They did?
Every one of them.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, heck yeah. In Arizona, in Iowa, in Ohio, what they do is, oh, you're going to get $7,000 per kid. Now, we may not raise the whole $7,000 because after all, we want to get a win-win here. So we'll raise it $5,000. That way we get $5,000 more of a school and you still got to make $2,000 as a parent. Oh, by the way, are you actually spending all that money in Arizona? We have $444 million that were unspent in ESA funds because parents are holding on to it because they're going to go ahead and use it for college.
Oh,
Is that what the money is?
I thought
That's taxpayer dollars. What's that?
I thought that money is like just like your budget. If you don't use it, it's gonna get lapsed.
Not in the state of Arizona, maybe in other states. That's the other problem, is every state's a little bit different. So it's much easier to create once. It's kind of like watching YouTube or TikTok. We can look at one person do something crazy and then try to extrapolate it to every other teenage kid in the world, right? Yeah. But the reality, that's not what's happening. We had one kid that made a poor decision, or we had 10 kids that made a poor decision, but most kids are pretty good kids doing the right things. And so we try to globalize what's taking place, and it's a little unique for each state. Each state, some states have more requirements than others. But the bottom line is the public charters are really private entities owning these, and they're in for a profit. That's the significant difference between the common good and profit. And if I'm making a profit, I look at the world differently. Again, let's look at the private sector versus the public sector. The private sector is in about money. Nothing wrong with that. That's what they're for. But the public sector is in for something different. And so when we have that mixing of what we're doing with teaching kids, then the money is spent differently. And I don't know that we watch the money that's going to the privates, because, let me back up. This country's always had choice. It's never been about choice. The difference is the choice was always on the responsibility of the parent to pay for choice. What we've switched in this country is the responsibility to pay for choice comes from the public tax dollars. That's the big difference. So if you're going to take public tax dollars, then you should be accountable for those tax dollars exactly the same way I am. And that's not occurring in this country. And so I don't think that if you really go into the numbers, I don't believe they're getting less to the degree they talk about, but there's some other inherent problems that if they are getting less, they're still taking more. So private school teachers are paid less than public school teachers. Charter school teachers are paid less than public school teachers. So obviously, if we're having a problem with paying teachers, this new model doesn't resolve that issue. I mean, the joke for a lot of private school teachers is you took a vow of poverty. So if I'm getting less money, then I'm making money somewhere. Because if I'm not making money, why I'm in the game? And so, I mean, I may have gone off on a tangent, so I apologize. But I just think sometimes when people take a look at it, the school choice issue, if the taxpayers are going to pay for it, fundamentally shifts the purpose and focus of traditional public education in this country. And I personally think it's a shame.
No, I think that's a very valid argument that it may be lesser on balance sheet because of the pay scale by the absolute number, but that would be incomplete sentence because you have to compare it with the offering as well. And if the transportation or extracurricular activities is not included, then in itself is not a right scale of measure in that way, leaving aside everything else.
I'll give you another easy way to check.
Okay.
In Arizona, they got empowerment scholarship accounts, ESAs, same as a voucher. They say that the voucher is 90% of what the public school kids make. Did they calculate that 90% off of what the public schools make or what the charter schools make? They calculated after the charter schools. Now, why would a legislator go ahead and come up with a system and choose the supposed lower of the two systems to calculate the 90% against.
Hmm.
I would argue that they didn't. They knew full well that we can go ahead and play this game. And what happens for a lot of traditional public schools is they calculate in what the local taxpayer pays for bonds and overrides, and then says, look how much more public schools are getting. Well, that's because their local taxpayer said yes. If they were truly getting more, the legislators in Arizona would have not calculated the 90% for the ESA off of the charter schools. They would have done it off the traditional publics. But they knew the charter schools from state funds get more money than public schools get from state funds. And so they calculated the 90% off that. Now, they argue and make the point that it's off of public schools, but it's not. And I think you have to look real deep on some of these because there's a sleight of hand that's taking place, and it gets pushed as a false narrative that also becomes the truth, even though it's not the truth.
Right, right. No, I'll definitely want to come back to our main topic as well.
Yeah, sorry about that. I got off on that.
No, I love it. I think that is very wonderful perspective. It opened up my mind as well on few biases that I might have developed over a period of time. But talking about JOCOMS Unified, I read a lot about how it's nationally recognized as a district of distinction. And I also read about the Innovative Forward initiative that you took, which transforms modern student empowering classrooms. So I would love to know the first phase of building this initiative. And there must be some naysayers, there must be some good things, bad things. So if you can paint a picture of how this initiative came to life.
And actually, the initiative came in a couple years before I got here.
Okay.
And in my career, I've used a lot of different initiatives. I'm a believer that there needs to be a framework. What I liken to is like, are you playing playground football or organized football? And if you don't have a structure, you're playing playground football where everybody really knows what the game is. Nobody knows when you score. Nobody knows when the game's over. Nobody knows when you win. And so when I got here, there was a buy-in, although there's always naysayers, and I'll talk about that in a second, but there was a buy-in to that program. So for me, and we had at that time about 600 employees, it was a whole lot easier for one of us to change than 600 of us to change. So it became incumbent upon me to figure out what was going on. I will tell you the foundation of modern teacher, and which is what our hashtag Ford's all about, is a very, very solid foundation. And it's as good a framework as I've seen in the work that I've done. And so for me, it wasn't hard to say we're going to accept this. One of the things that is unique to us, we've kind of settled down a little bit, but when I first got here for my first 5 years, we were turning over about 35% of our teachers every year.
Wow.
We're on the fringe of the Phoenix area, and every district to the west of us was on what we call a M&O override, so they could pay their teachers about $6,000 more. We could never pass one in our community. And so a teacher would come in and get started, get to about year 4 or 5, probably live in one of these communities so they can move closer to home and they can get a $5,000, $6,000 raise. Mm-hmm. So when you're rolling 30%, 35% of your teachers, and it becomes critical for the young new teachers coming in to have a framework to work off of. And so although we've had, like any situation, some pushback, it became a little bit different because you have to approach it differently when you're turning over that many teachers. And when you sit and say, so how many I don't have in other districts I've been, you might have 50, 60, 70% of your teachers have been with you 10 plus years. That wasn't our case in our district. And so therefore, you're teaching them the way things are in this district a little bit different, and you don't have as much institutional memory because you have brand new people every single year. We turn over, I've been here 7 years, and I'm out of a 24-member leadership team, I'm the third longest tenured administrator in the district. So when you're turning over administration and you're turning over teachers, you need to frame something up so they know what you're expecting. The difficulty is it's not a 1-year learning like anything else. It's a 3, 4, 5-year learning phase. So we struggle with that, especially how do we bring people on board? Yeah, we've had a few that stay long enough. So how do you move them forward? So we've had to deal with that. We've tried to, just like a classroom, have those that are at different levels, teach them a little bit different. But the framework itself is very solid. The results, when you go into our classrooms and see, especially our top-notch teachers, you would say this makes total sense. This is what this is how kids want to learn and why they want to learn. So it's not a hard sell. It's really more the only overwhelmingness as a new teacher of, oh my gosh, how do I do everything I need to do as a brand new teacher coming straight out of college?
Yeah.
Or if I'm coming from a different district, how do I flip my brain from what I used to do in my other district to what I do now? So that's a little bit of it takes a little bit of time, but I think overall we've slowly been building positive in terms of our all the results that people want to judge us by, and so therefore I think you get more buy-in over time. But I don't go into district without understanding that it's a 5 or 7 year just to get my little piece of it. But the reality is, depending on how long the district's been there, I'm a blip on their radar. If I'm in a community that's been there for 200, 250 years, if you think I'm going to come in 5 years and change the perception of the district and the community completely, it's not going to happen. I will be able to nibble at the edges and get people to buy into what we're doing, but I'm not going to change the culture of a community or a culture of a school district that's 200 years old. It's just, it's not going to happen. And I think sometimes we think we can do more than we can, and we really can't. We have a moment in time in an organization or community to do the most impactful thing we can while we're in that moment in time. But to suggest it's going to be something greater than that is not realistic, just knowing how organizations and communities work.
No, absolutely. Understanding that you were able to train those educators on a new framework, which helped them groom, but you still were not able to keep up because of the pay difference.
Yeah.
That shows that they were still happy to work with under your leadership or your framework, because it was helping them command a better salary out there. So I love this initiative that you have created, and I hope you guys are able to retain further. And I was reading about that. For that, you also have the Staff Excellence Awards, right?
Yep.
You do mention that public recognition ritual in a way. So tell me more about that. That might be helpful for other school leaders to know.
Right. Well, actually, we do two different things.
Okay.
Okay. And so we have, each school has its own colors, but basically the district colors have always been a blue, kind of a dark blue. So when I got here, I started a Blue Apple Award, and we make sure that we honor throughout the entire district every month. We get Blue Apple Award winners. And so we make sure too, though, that our schools have to pick a teacher that can get it, but they also have to pick a classified staff that gets it. And they also have to pick a conglomerate of people that are up in the district office, or excuse me, the school office. But we also do our departments. And so that's one component that says every single month we're going to sit and recognize with the blue apple. And the idea is that they're little blue apples that can be placed around the district, because a teacher will put it on their desk. And so when you walk around the district, you start to see these blue apples. And over time, people have really come to want those blue apples. Then we also have a Staff Excellence Award, which says we're going to go ahead and recognize the best from a vote of the school each year, the best person out of their school. Both as a teacher, but also as a support staff, as a principal. And so we recognize there. We also do this in September. We have what's called Legendary Teacher Day. And so we give a recognition. It's kind of around, I know in Arizona it's bigger, and I don't know where else it is. And it's not about who's best. The Legendary Teacher Day is about recognizing that every single individual on this planet has a legendary teacher. It may not be a teacher, it may be a parent, maybe a mentor in their work, but that they made a profound difference in their life. So we pick people from across the district, regardless of age of teaching, and we just say, thank you. You represent all teachers, and you represent the positive difference you're making in the life of a child. But also, we want to recognize that you have a chance to say thank you to that special teacher. And so they always give us the name of the special teacher that made a difference in their life. So when we read their name at the board meeting, we will also say, and they want to recognize their whomever from wherever. And I think it's all those little things that say, we're just saying you're valued in our district, and we want to recognize you. And whether it's a Blue Apple, whether it's the Staff Excellence Awards, which is like the Academy Awards, or it's a legendary teacher, we just want to say thank you for everything you do. And we purposely go out and build that. And then we recognize at our schools every month, like if it's custodian month, we'll recognize our custodians. If it's food service, we'll recognize our food service people. And again, it's just designed to say, more than anything else, thank you for everything you do, and you're welcome to be in our community, and we appreciate everything you've done for our family and our kids and our colleagues. And we try to really conscientiously make a decision to do that.
I love that. I love that totally. Um, One thing that I want to ask is, what do you think is that one, what do you call it, mandate or any kind of practice that you currently do or has been continued to do for a long time that you want to erase, that you think might save teachers' time or teachers can feel more valued in a way?
Oops, you broke up on me. So can you say
Okay.
that again? You're
Yeah.
going in and out.
So I was asking
Um,
that is there any mandate or any particular exercise that teachers do all the time which you think waste their time, and you want to erase that or you want to deprecate it?
that's a good question. I think over time, sometimes we chase things that we don't need to chase. I know across this country right now, there's going to be cell phone mandates that you have to take cell phones away from kids, and I know not everybody agrees with me. I think that's chasing our tail. If you set up the right environment, the kids won't use the phones in their classroom. If you work with families about how you're going to do the phones, you can use it as a tool. And so I think sometimes we have laws that are put in place that force people to do a whole bunch more work than is necessary and takes you away from doing what you need to do. And it's changed over time. And so as I sit and see what we're doing in my career, it's that let us teach. Let us teach. Let us not have to do, there's a poster somewhere that talks about here's one page of the things the teacher had to do in 1830s, and here's 5 pages of what they have to do now. It's we keep adding more and more and more to the plate. But if you're not taking anything off the plate, and especially if it's a waste of space, then you're not getting done what you need done. And so I think it's that concern. And too often, if I have, if there's 10 people that complain to the legislature, there's a chance you're going to get a bill. Now, did anybody ask the teachers or anybody else whether that was the most effective bill? Or even if you have 10 teachers complaining, did you ask 50 or 100 teachers what the impact of that is? And so we create these new mandates, federal or state, that take up a whole lot of time. That are they as effective as we think they're going to be? I mean, I'll use the cell phone. I understand everybody saying, oh my God,
Yeah.
our kids look at cell phones all the time. There's yet to be a meeting that I have not been in, and I don't care where that meeting is, with adults, that I couldn't point to 85% of the people in that meeting looking at their cell phones throughout the entire meeting,
Yeah.
looking at the computers throughout the entire meeting. I can't tell you how many people don't know what I said because they're looking at the computers and they're trying to multitask, which is an impossibility. But yet we're going to go ahead and tell kids, don't use your phone. Yet every single time you go to a restaurant, everybody's on their phone. You go to your house, everybody's on their phone. You go to a meeting, everybody's on their phone. But somehow kids have to do something totally different from what the rest of the world's doing. And they watch everybody in the rest of the world and they're like, something's wrong with this message. I'm not saying kids shouldn't have a time to put away the phone in the classroom, but I think there's a way to do it without mandating a law that says we're going to go ahead and do this. And I think we have a lot of those, and I think that's what takes away teacher time from actually just teaching kids. It's cell phones today, but it could have just, I could give you 10 more different examples across my career where we're just chasing our tails.
No, I think that's the most impactful mandate that you want to change, maybe that you point
Yeah.
out. Um,
Yeah.
okay, lastly, I want to talk about when you talk about valuing teacher, a lot is talking about professional development, upskilling or conferences or workshops. So, and I did see that you have Title II fund, almost 400K for professional development. So can you walk us, where are you investing that money? Also, you're looking at AI as a tool for upskilling because that supposedly can save a lot of teachers' time and make them efficient. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so for us, more than anything else, is just making sure that we're concentrated in what we do. So we talked about hashtag Forward Modern Teacher. So whatever we do at the beginning of the year in this district, when you come off of a fall break, winter break, and spring break, the kids come back on Tuesday, and on Monday we have PD. But we make sure whatever PD we do before the start of school is then embedded, and there's a thread of it throughout the entire year. So it's not a one and done. we try to make sure when we send people to the conferences, to the extent possible, they're supplementing what we're talking about. Well, the ESSERs from the federal government, we actually brought our teachers back 3 days early. And again, the design was to go ahead and say, okay, whatever we do in that 3 days, we're going to follow it up throughout the year with our PD. So we've tried to focus very hard on the concepts of the modern teacher framework for us, but throughout the entire year, and not try to cram it all in the first day and a half before when the teachers come back, but rather say this first one gives you the foundational piece. The second one in October, we're going to give you some extra pieces to put onto the fin. Then we're going to come back in January, and then we're going to come back in March, and we're just going to build on whatever conceptually we talked about at the beginning of the year. We try to divide, so back to the staff. We try to divide those that are brand new teachers from those that are veterans. So what we're working with on the veteran teachers is an extension of what we talked about based on their skill set versus what we're working on with a brand new teacher who's still learning what we're talking about. So we've tried to differentiate and give people choice as to where they go with the training, but it's focused and purposeful to the same thematic piece each year versus, hey, I went to a conference in October and I saw this really cool thing, so let's slap it together and put it in January's PD. Now we'll work on that for next year. And so it's really that purposefulness across the entire year that I think our folks appreciate, because then they're hearing the same message and building on it, kind of scaffold it up every single PD we do.
Right. And what about the AI aspect? Are you guys getting teachers trained on AI too?
Yes, as part of that training a couple of years ago. We still got a ways to go, but we have we've started the initial AI training, just trying to get an idea of what they can do and how it can be beneficial. We have some basic policies in place. We probably need to do a better job with that. We know that it has, I mean, we're all, even with the AI thing, I think the piece we have to separate out on AI, what I hear with AI, as all of us use AI because they asked us to turn on the TV and turn on the lights and give me directions to the next place I'm going. So AI is not about that piece. What I hear in public education, everybody's concerned about is cheating. So we're going to take this whole AI issue and we're going to make it this big, massive problem. Why don't we teach kids how to use that skill versus getting all excited because they may be quote unquote cheating? With all due respect, cheating has been going on since the dawn of time and will continue through the end of time. It's like, how do we take the tool that they have and make it change? And we're still working on that piece. We don't have that solution, but I think we want to be careful because we're trying to put together 2 or 3 things that are not necessarily there. So how do you use it to be more productive? But then how do you work with your teachers and your students so that they can use it to their benefit? And when's the best time to use it and the right time to use it? And then give them some skill sets that they can use later in life that will be beneficial. We're fighting our way through that as we speak. Last year we did initial foray, and we're going to work some more on that. But we probably got a little bit of ways to go on that. We're just kind of getting into it at the beginning.
No, I agree with you. I think it's important to address it because students are anyways using it. So I think last question. I know we have overshot. It's been a fun discussion. But as you said that you are entering, this is your last year in education. What do you have any retirement plans? What are you gonna do?
Oh no, it's my last year doing this, but I'm working on, that's part of why I started the Substack article, is I have some things I want to write about, say about, and I still want to keep engaged. And so I'll be doing some other things, but not necessarily the day-to-day grind of superintendent. I've been doing that for 25 years. And so I'm just looking for something different, but I don't see myself stepping away from K-12, traditional K-12. It means too much to me. And I still got, I believe, something to contribute. So they'll just be in a different manner. I'm still trying to figure that out.
No, I love that. I think there are a lot other ways as well to contribute to the overall movement. And I would love to be in touch and keep updated what you are up to, because there are a lot of places where we can collaborate. But
yep,
I'd
love to do that.
Absolutely. So any closing remarks? I think we have touched upon a lot of pointers of where we undervalue teachers and how we can value them.
Yep.
And we try to also kind of dig into that. Any closing remarks that you have on this topic?
I think the only closing, first of all, thank you very much for giving me a chance to talk. My wife always says I like to talk a lot. But truly, it's really about a chance to celebrate the profession and celebrate what teachers do and the importance of what they do. And I don't think I think we have undervalued it, and there's not a greater profession in the world. And so any chance that we can do to build up our teachers, we should be working on that. So thank you very much.
Love it. Absolutely. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
You
And
bet.
we'll be in touch. Have a good
You
day.
got it. Take care. Have a good
Thank
one.
you for watching. Join our journey at Tomo Club